Alternative, I'm William Cook. I've got a pretty casual video for you today. I've got about 25 albums slash EPs from the past, from April and May, that I want to talk about. I started this channel because I wanted to talk about the music I'm listening to. And call it OCD, but man, does it ever feel good? It's essential for me to share a little bit about the music I'm listening to. And I got all these albums that I listen to. That's what I do, man. That's what I devote my life to. Listening to album after album, and I want to share my thoughts on this music. And I've been sharing album reviews on my Instagram for several years now. Some are more long form, some are shorter form. I jumped onto YouTube to turn it into video form, but I've pretty much just become a reaction channel. But ultimately, man, I want to do album reviews. I love diving into an album and sharing my thoughts on it. But as an amateur YouTuber working a full-time job, it is absolutely impossible for me right now to write up a review for an album, film it, edit it, and get it out in a timely manner. And what I've been finding with music, man, every week we have new albums coming out, and if you want to get the clicks, you better be on that album right away. But I'm always at least a month behind, and I am listening to these albums. I have the time to listen, but when it comes to the writing, the filming, and the editing part, I just can't keep up. And so this video is very cleansing for me, because I've got a whole bunch of albums from late April and throughout May that I want to share my thoughts on. At the very least, I put together ratings for these albums. I have their final scores. I have their track ratings. Nope, I didn't write up any reviews for these albums, but I wanted to sit down here now and share my very casual thoughts on these albums and share the final scores that I gave them. And while I may not have the most insightful or informative words to share on these albums right now, this video is going to give you an overall idea of what I thought about each of these albums. And to kick things off, we're gonna go all the way back to April 22nd, a couple albums that I've been wanting to mention from April 22nd. The first one being Fontaines DC, Skinty Fia. This is my first album with Fontaines DC, an Irish post-punk band. You know, I was seeing a lot of praise for this album within the alternative community, and I find that a lot of these reviewers, like I mentioned, I review albums on Instagram, and I follow a lot of other accounts that review albums on Instagram. But a lot of these other accounts, I find I just don't really relate to their praise for a lot of these acclaimed albums that all the critics seem to love. And I was thinking, okay, well, yeah, this might not be right up my alley. And yeah, it's not exactly right up my alley, but I do see the appreciation in this music. It's very cool stuff. These guys are undeniably cool, and I do overall enjoy the sound. The lead singer has a great delivery, and I definitely can find myself enjoying the vibe, the energy of these songs. But looking at my track ratings here, most of them just don't quite do it for me. The single Jackie Down the Line, I gave that a perfect 4. I love that song. I think it is the perfect showing of their sound with that, you know, charm that I find the lead singer has. And it comes through with the biggest catch, and I really appreciate the overall mood of that track. I mean, I like the mood of this whole album, and that's a big reason why a lot of these songs are able to at least get the okay for me, but they're not focused on coming through with the big melodic hits that you know I'm looking for. If you know what I like, these guys, they're not quite there, but it is a cool album, no doubt about it. Gave it a rating of 6.9. Now, the other album from April 22nd, I gotta mention Bowling for Soup, Pop Drunk Snot Bread. How humorous. And yep, this album is a bit of a joke altogether. I mean, these guys received a lot of attention back in the, early 2000s with their song 1985. And then the song Almost was another pretty popular single that I adore that song. And those are the songs there, I mean, Almost especially, that really shows that this band can actually pull through with more than just joke pop punk, but this whole album, it is a joke. And I'm not trying to be too mean when I say that. I mean, these guys have become a band kind of like NoFX, I guess, that they're humorous and they don't take themselves too seriously. But the music, it ain't very good. And a song like Almost, like, damn, that song was amazing. And 1985 as well, a freaking awesome track. And it's like, guys, you need to come back here and give us some really good songs. Yeah, you can poke fun at yourselves, have some fun, be funny, but you gotta come through with good music. And a lot of these songs are not that good. I'd say the closest they come to actually being pretty good is Hello Anxiety, a very solid song that does come through with some emotional substance. And also the late album track Wouldn't Change a Thing. That song is pretty introspective and thoughtful, and again, comes through with some more of that emotional reward. I gave the album a rating of a 5.1. Moving into the final week of April, April 29th, Amber Run, The Start, Act 2. So this is an EP from Amber Run. They're a UK indie rock group. Just 4 songs. This follows their EP from last year, The Search, Act 1. And what can I say about this EP? Just an easygoing sound, alternative rock music, not heavy in the slightest, but I wouldn't call it too light. You know, there's a lot of percussion, a lot of drum work to it, guitar and bass and whatnot. It's just your full band sound. Great vocals, great production, good melodies, good feeling to it, and I think they pull through the strongest with Half Alive. I love what they do with that song. Definitely recommend this band if you haven't heard of them yet. Gets a rating of 8.4. Now next up we have Mansionair, Happiness Guaranteed. This is an Australian group, indie, electronic. The first 9 songs on this album are their own, while the final 6 are collaborations with, it looks like some other electronic artists that I'm not familiar with. And damn, these guys just pull off some really cool stuff on this. Very, very chill, but tons of melodic reward and just easy going, but full of substance to these songs and some real emotional takeaways as well. The song Empty Promise was the one that got my perfect 4 rating. Yeah, that song, that really hits the feels. The album gets a rating of 8.3. Now we have Francis Baptiste. He's an Indigenous singer-songwriter from my home city of Vancouver, BC. Out of respect for the Indigenous language, I'm not going to try to pronounce the title of this album. It's Family is what it translates to. The guy is clearly a very talented singer-songwriter. And this album shows off a lot of struggle, a lot of hardship for Francis, and it really has me feeling for the guy. And I hope that, you know, he's in an okay place, because this album, you know, I appreciate it for how it lets us into some of the struggles that he deals with. And while it's not all that riveting for me, there's definitely several songs on here that I find are, you know, most of them are at least pretty good. They're just but they're just not quite there. But really, he does come through very strong on the first half of this album with Reasons I Can't Stay, River's End, 50/50, hooks, man. I'm all about the hooks. And damn, does he ever come through with some great sing-along melodies. But again, really full of that emotion that I'm looking for. And I am very impressed with several of the songs on this album. I gave it a final rating of 7.1. Now we got the latest album from Block Party Alpha Games. Block Party, they've been around for quite a while. I feel like they're a pretty well-known name. They're from the UK. It's their 6th album. My 2nd with them. I've never been a huge Block Party fan, but yeah, I've known that name. And I was able to have a pretty good time with this album. Their vocalist, Kelly, he is such a performer and he really pushes these songs. But the band to back him, it shows off a lot of energy within this album. That's the main thing I was thinking coming into sharing my very casual thoughts, is like the energy, the drum work is super like, there's a lot to it. And it really comes through with this energy that I really ride the whole time. The melodic reward, it's okay. It's here and there. There is several tracks that just aren't quite enough. But I would say these ones that got the 3.5 from me really show some great promise. Just can't quite reach that perfect 4, but man, give the opener Day Drinker a try. That song, wow, I'm so, it really gets me excited. But again, just not quite reaching that perfect 4. Album gets a rating of 6.98. I'll round that up to a solid 7. All right, The Head and the Heart, Every Shade of Blue, indie folk pop. They're from Seattle. Always like to find bands from the Pacific Northwest. I fell in love with their song Another Story from several years back. Nothing else from them over the years since has got to me quite the same as that song, but I really recommend Another Story by this band if you haven't heard it. And this new album, it's a big one. Yeah, they packed in about 16 songs, too many. That's a double album right there, and they could have cut this down to about 10 tracks, and it would have been a lot tighter and would have received a better rating. It starts off very promising. Every Shade of Blue, the title track. Tiebreaker is such a to it, though it just falls shy of really getting to me. And Paradigm as well, super cool track. Love the sound they show on Paradigm, which they don't really show on anything else on this album. But after that, really promising start to the album. Same Hurt, another really great catch to that. Nothing else comes through with quite the same amount of reward. I gave the album a rating of 6.7. And the final album from April that I wanted to talk about, Vagrants, Be Consumed. This band from Florida, they're on Equal Vision Records, and for a band on Equal Vision Records, which I consider to be a pretty well-known label, I'm pretty shocked to see that they have, I believe, less than 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. I don't know why they seem to be having such a hard time growing their numbers, because their sound is very, professional, great production quality, and I feel like they'd appeal to a lot of fans of this post-hardcore kind of stuff. They definitely appeal to me. The opening track, You Still Linger, if there's one song that I'd recommend you check out, that's the one right there. But then the following, Day by Day, Skin and Bone, we got Aimless, Failure. The whole first half of this album, it comes through so damn good. Hooks and heavy. Failure is more just straight out heavy. Is just brutal. They hit you very hard with it, but yeah, the production quality is great. The drum work, all of it just really comes through so well. They start losing me in the second half, though. Not one of the songs on the second half could even reach a 3 rating for me. So yeah, that is a bit of a shame to see, but maybe would have been better suited for just a 5-song EP. But still, I feel like they deserve a lot more attention, and I am excited to see what else they got coming for us. The album gets a rating of 7.2. All right, we'll move into May. For May 6th, the big one that, yeah, I would have loved to do a full-on album review for this album. This is a huge deal, but I'll just sum it up pretty quickly here. Arcade Fire, their latest album, We. Arcade Fire, no introduction needed, but I mean, I've been in love with them since their debut album. Their first 3 albums, I know I'm not alone when I say that they are 3 of the best albums of the 21st century. They had a massive impact on me throughout my earlier years. And yeah, they started to lose it with the Reflector album, Everything Now, after being away for several years and coming back with Everything Now. I didn't care. I wasn't too stoked on that album at all. But now here we are back, their longest gap between albums, back with We. And it's all right. The first half of the album, pretty bleak. And unfortunately, I'm down for some really depressing songs, but I don't find any of that first half of the album to be that impactful. But they do start coming through on the second half of this album. I think the Lightning 1 and 2 are very good. Unconditional 1, another great track. And then just as I was putting together this rating for the album, Unconditional 2, Race and Religion, I was like, holy damn, this song is a perfect 4. I love that song. And I'm so happy that they could do that for me. I was thinking, my original few listens of the album back when it came out, nothing really was getting to me, but when I sat down with it recently here to put together my rating for it, Race and Religion there gave me that gut punch that gives me the perfect 4. And I was like, oh, this is a song that I can see myself coming back to a lot. And that's all I needed from the Arcade Fire. At least it gave me one perfect 4. Love that song. the final closer, whatever. But good to have them back in our lives regardless. And I ended up giving the album a rating of 6.9. Now we got Sigrid, How to Let Go. I believe this is the sophomore album from this Norwegian pop artist. I found her with Sucker Punch, the title track off of her debut album, and that song is pop perfection. It comes through so strong, has a massive hit to it. That's my type of pop song. Oh, and I'll backtrack that a little bit, actually. I discovered her with the song Raw, which came out before the debut full length. But Sucker Punch was the song that really did it for me. Now, this new album, you know, I'm coming into it hoping for more like Sucker Punch, but sadly, there is nothing that comes through with quite the amount of grit that song carries. I find she sounds a lot more generic on this album. Doesn't stand out as much. Very dance pop, and just some similarities to other pop artists out there that has her kind of blending into the crowd. It's still easy to enjoy this stuff, but I do find most of it is just falling into the pretty good range. But she does come through with some bite on Burning Bridges. We got Mirror. Those two singles are both great songs. And Bad Life with Ollie Sykes of Bring Me the Horizon. It is a very emotional and powerful track, and I do appreciate its message. The music video, I think, is a bit comical. I think Ollie puts in way too much into his performance, and it just doesn't really line up with the energy that the song gives you. He puts too much into it, and every time I watch it, I'm just like, oh, it just feels off. But a great song nonetheless. I gave the album a rating of 6.98. Rounded up to a 7. Okay, next up we got WINDWAKER, Love Language. WINDWAKER, a band that I had not heard of before this year. They're from Australia. Debut full length. They're on Fearless Records, one of the labels that I definitely like to keep an eye on. You know, this band, they're heavy and catchy, and I love that type of stuff. I do find they can be a little obnoxious at times, and some songs I do find I'm mostly just waiting for the hook. The vocalist is pretty good. It looks like he's the one who does the screams and the cleans. Some pretty whiny screams, but a diverse range of screams, from the more guttural to the more shrill delivery. So I am pretty impressed with the overall performance here. And they come through with a perfect 4 on Lucy. That single is a must here. But for the most part, the album, I guess, just isn't really coming through with too much that's getting me that excited. The opener, Beautiful, another single that I would really recommend. It's those first two, Beautiful and Lucy, that are just like the big takeaways. If you're gonna only hear a couple, check those ones out. But, you know, if you're into some heavy, you know, melodic stuff, they tick off most of those boxes, and they're definitely a band to keep an eye on. Gave the album a rating of 6.8. Okay, our last album from May 6, Anyway Gain. Their latest album, Still Anyways. Now this band consists of Sam Roberts. We got the Tokyo Police Club frontman Dave Monks. We got Chris Murphy from Sloan, and then Menno Versteeg from Colorado. Now, I'm familiar with Sam Roberts, of course. I'm a big fan of Tokyo Police Club. Chris Murphy from Sloan, I keep an eye on Sloan a bit. Colorado, a band I never really checked into, so I have no idea about who Menno Versteeg is, but they all sing, and it is really cool to hear them all you know, supplying vocals on these songs, and they really have a fun way of switching between deliveries within even the same verse. They kind of go from one guy to another, and it's kind of hard to pick out who's doing what here, but I do find it's a fun approach to this music. And while this album can be a bit too campfire sing-along-y for my tastes at points, they actually pull off some tremendous feeling on a couple of these songs. Those two being Reckless Reckless and Real Thing, both pre-album singles, and just very fulfilling songs. Great sing-alongs, great uplift, really make me feel good, man. Give me that gut punch that you need to give me to get that perfect 4, and I really recommend those songs. If you're looking for some good old Canadian indie rock music, these guys, these artists, all 4 of them are very successful musicians, at least when it comes to Canadian music. And it's great to see them all come together for this album that just is pretty much full of feel-good stuff that makes for some easy listening. Gave the album a rating of 7.2. Okay, we got one release from May 13th that I wanted to touch on, and that's from April Rose Gabrielli, Unreasonable Woman. She is an underground artist from the States. I define her music as pop with some edgy rock undertones. It's her debut EP, I believe. She has a great vocal delivery. That's a big takeaway from this album. Really nice vocals, kind of gospel leaning. And these songs come through really strong. Lots of promise to this music. Nothing that fell shy of a 3 for me. And I was even close to giving the song Do You a perfect 4, but just decided to leave it at that 3.5. But really impressive stuff. Bad Habits was a single, and there's some grit to it, man, and great catch, big vocal performance, and lots of promise from April Rose Gabrielli. I gave the EP a rating of 7.9. Also, there's one other May 13th release that I would think that I would enjoy enough to want to put together some thoughts on, and that's Florence and the Machine, their latest album. Couldn't stand it. I've enjoyed some Florence in the past, but this album, I just couldn't even bother trying to appreciate. I feel like the singles coming up to it just were like, no, I don't enjoy this. And it was a big album too, and I spent a couple listens with it, but I just wasn't feeling it at all. So I tossed that one completely. Sorry, Florence. Now moving to May 20th. This one I 100% intended on doing a in-depth album review for, but a month after the album's release, I've decided, nah, I guess I'll just squeeze it in with my little wrap up here. Everything, raw data feel. Now this is album 6 from the UK band. The big noteworthy thing about this album is that they used AI to help write some of the lyrics, but I'm pretty sure it ultimately didn't contribute much in the lyrical department, and I don't find that AI contribution has really done anything to make this album notably unique. I know when I came into it, I was thinking, oh, that's really cool. I'm gonna really pay attention to hearing these lyrics and how they're, crafted from artificial intelligence, but no, it's not gonna jump out to you like that at all. The one thing about Everything is that their past 3 albums each gave me a top 10 song of the year. I've been doing a top 100 songs of the year since 2014, and yeah, their albums from 2015, 2017, and 2020 all landed a song on my top 10, and not one other band can I say that about. Not one other band has made my top 10 more than once, let alone 3 times. So that's pretty huge. Well, technically the band Muna has made my top 10 twice, but the song Bodies was my #1 song of 2020, and that was technically a song from the Knox featuring Muna. Just had to clarify that. Now this new album from Everything, unfortunately, they've broken the streak. They will not be making my top 10 of the year with any of these songs. Not to say that this album isn't awesome, because it is such a great group of tracks. The opener, Teletype, is the one song that I gave the perfect 4 to, and I just couldn't quite justify giving a perfect 4 to any of these other songs, but really still lots of great stuff to be found here. Their vocalist, Jonathan Higgs, is a pleasure as always, and the production, everything about this album just sounds great. They really come through with lots of great hooks, great feeling, and I'm super impressed. No, maybe they won't be making my top 10 of the year, but we'll see where Teletype ends up landing, if it even makes my top 100. You can find that song on my must-hear alternative playlist for 2022, which I always link in the description below. I gave the album a final rating of 7.95. Yeah, we could round that up to a solid 8. Okay, next up we have another artist from my home city of Vancouver, BC, an indie singer-songwriter, Jillian Lake. Her album Younger Than, I do believe this might be her debut full-length album. She's been leading up to this album for the past couple of years. Several of these songs we saw released as singles, a couple of years back. The song Walk All Over You, which is the only song that I gave the perfect 4 to, that made my top 100 of 2020. But there's definitely more good to be found on this album than just that song. Lots of great stuff. And it's more than just a artist with an acoustic guitar There's a lot of cool production elements to this, keys and synths and whatnot, that really bring more to these songs, and I really appreciate a lot of it. She's a wonderful vocalist, great songwriter. She has a very tender delivery and just heartfelt and soft, but coming through with that melody and emotion to really keep me interested. Lots of great feeling to be found on this album, and I really hope to see her grow in the indie realm. I gave the album a rating of 7.6. Okay, I gotta mention the latest album from LYKKE, I. Now, LYKKE, Swedish artist. This is my second album with her. I know she's been making waves in the alternative realm for several years, but it wasn't until 2018's So Sad, So Sexy that I jumped on board, and I loved some of the stuff off this album. Jaguars in the Air, Sex, Money, Feelings Die, Deep End. It mostly Jaguars in the Air and Deep End. Those two songs were massive for me in 2018. And you know, that album had me thinking of her as a pop artist. But then we get this album and it's like, whoa, this is not at all the same as what she gave us with Sex, Money, Feelings Die. This stuff is soft. It's sad. It's got a much more stripped down presence to it than we got with her last album. Definitely not getting that pop strength. And what this album has me thinking is, maybe if it was a different time, a different place for me, maybe there's a different universe where I would connect more with this music, because I'm on the edge of really feeling these songs. But ultimately, they just don't quite land the mark. Some good stuff though. Ultimately, I do appreciate the mood enough to be able to ride this album out. And she does come through with a song that I couldn't deny giving the perfect 4 to, and that's Highway to Your Heart. That one definitely manages to get into me unlike anything else off this album. Ended up giving the album a rating of 7.3. Okay, next up we have the one and only Harry Styles. My first album with Harry, Harry's House. And like the opening track says, this whole album, it feels like music for a sushi restaurant. He's keeping it very chill on this album, very easy songs. He sounds amazing. His voice is like an angel, smooth as butter. But there's very little exciting me about these songs. You know, there's a tender feeling to the album, but I find these songs are making me more tired than inspired. But you can't deny the overall production quality of this album. It's pretty slick, pretty sexy. In fact, I'd say cinema. Throw that onto the Lovemakers playlist. That song has a lot of to it. And the song Satellite, you know what? That's a great track. That's the one song on this album that I think will have me coming back. The album gets a final rating of 5.96. We'll round it up to a solid 6. And if you thought that was a negative review, well, it gets worse with Static Dress, Rogue Carpet Disaster. Now, on paper, this band seems like something I should enjoy. Emo post-hardcore from the UK. They kind of came onto my radar this year. I'm pretty sure they're a blossoming on the rise group. And I was like, yeah, man, this has got to be something I'm into. But no, man, this album is an absolute mess. It is some brutal heaviness. And just for that sheer brutal heaviness about it, it has me respecting it a bit, but I just can't wrap my hands around these songs. You know, most songs do actually hold some form of melody to them, but they ain't doing much for me. I find the vocals tend to get buried in the mix at some points. And I will say there is a pretty good flow from one song to the next, and it's not all an absolute rage fest. They do an all right job of kind of balancing the heavy with some lighter moments. But ultimately, this album is here to pummel you with this raw, chaotic energy, and it doesn't seem to be too concerned with pulling off any real gut-punching melodies. Even a song like Marisol, I mean, I can feel that intention for a powerful, emotive lift. It's there, I see what they're doing, but it's just not cutting into me. Ended up giving the album a rating of 5.1. Now, this next EP, we have Be Well, Hello Sun, hardcore punk music from Baltimore. Yeah, and comparing that to Static Dress, like hardcore punk versus emo post-hardcore, I'm picking emo post-hardcore any day, but no, Be Well have turned out to be the much better band in my eyes. And it all comes down to the feeling, man. The lead singer carries such a powerful feeling behind his words, behind his performance. Lots of pain shed within the lyrics. Topics on depression, mental health, and it sure resonates. I gave the perfect forward to I'll Leave You With This. That's the one that you gotta check out for just a real big chorus and the most power of the album. But a few other really strong tracks. Treadless, Hello Sun, the title track, and In the Shadow of Who You Thought I Was. Some big catch to these songs and some pretty cutting lyrics that really leave their mark. Gave the EP a final rating of 8.1. All right, we're almost done here. Final group of releases from the month of May, the May 27th releases. We'll kick it off with Scary Kids Scaring Kids, Out of Light. Now, Scary Kids Scaring Kids, I never listened to them back in the day, but they had a bit of popularity. Their 2005 album, The City Sleeps in Flames, I believe is a bit of a scene classic, though I was never aware of it. They're from Arizona, post-hardcore music. Their lead singer, Tyson Stevens, passed away in 2014 from a suspected heroin overdose. R.I.P. I never knew about this, never kept an eye on the band, but they're back in 2022. Mostly the same original lineup, and they don't have a vocalist. What instead they are doing is taking on a guest vocalist for each of the songs, which I think is a great idea. You get features from Spencer Charnas of Ice Nine Kills, Noah Sebastian of Bad Omens. You got Lil Lotus on here, Cove Reber, the former vocalist of Seosin, now Dead American. Spencer Chamberlain of Under Oath, get Donovan Malero of Hail the Sun. Jesse Cash from Era. Mod Sun on here, and some other artists that I'm just kind of getting familiar with. And it's a good album, man, a very solid album. Nothing quite making that perfect for, but plenty of strong hooks to keep me impressed. Really cool to hear a different vocalist on each track, and definitely a must-hear album for fans of catchy post-hardcore music. Gets a rating of 7.8. Man, this takes forever to film, but this has been very cleansing for me to get these albums off of my chest, and happy to get this one out of the way. Stars from Capleton Hill. Maybe it's Capleton. Capleton sounds more correct to me. Stars, this band from Montreal. I don't really even know why I got into them back in about 2014 with their album No One Is Lost, but they came across my radar and I dived on in. And I'm very thankful that I did check into them because that album gave me the title track, No One Is Lost, which has gone down as one of my all-time favorite songs. That song is something else, man, and it's a very special song in my life. So if there's one song I could recommend from Stars, it's that one, because I wouldn't really recommend much else from them. They've got a good sound, though, a good sound. I appreciate their sound. It's been enough to keep me keeping an eye on them. And this album, yeah, it's pleasant, whatever, but really nothing that great. Still, take a look at the track ratings here. All the songs that got the 3, those are good songs. They're good songs, man. They're good. Check them out. Album gets a rating of 6.15. We'll call it a 6.2. Okay, next up, Bay Ledges Ritual. Bay Ledges, I believe a California artist, very chill sound, beachy guitar with some added electronic elements, soft percussion. Now, a couple of these songs with Up and Like a Bird, they date back to the summer of 2020, but most of it's new. And those two songs, Up and Like a Bird, are a couple of the biggest takeaways. It's In Water, though. That is the song that I would recommend the most. It's the one that gives me the gut punch, man. I love how chill this stuff is, and a lot of really chill music can be like, yeah, it's chill, but just doesn't come through with the emotional or melodic reward for me. But this stuff really manages to come through on both of those levels. Very easygoing, but substantial, man. Rewarding, and a great album for the summer. Look at the album artwork. Like, this is meant for lazy and on the beach, and I'm looking forward to keeping this one close as we move more into the summer. Gets a rating of 7.95. We'll round it up to an 8. Next up, Jukebox the Ghost. My first album with Jukebox the Ghost. Cheers is the name. Now, they're theatrical, Queen-inspired rock, lots of piano. Definitely not the exact type of music you're gonna see me listening to all that often, but this is a band that I've been aware of, and I'm glad I jumped on board because they got some fun stuff. It's a good sound. I think the best of it comes through with the song Wasted, which features Andrew McMahon from Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, also from Jack's Mannequin. Never listened to them, though. And I love Andrew McMahon. And I feel like this song is an Andrew McMahon song, pretty much. And it's where they come through with the most emotional substance of this album. But there is plenty of catch to be found on these songs. An overall feel-good energy, kind of playful. But like I said, you know, a song like Wasted does show off a little bit more of that emotional substance. The album gets a rating of 6.9. Okay, we're almost done here with The Punches, Discontent. With The Punches, brand new band in my life. They're underground pop punk out of New York. They're on Mutant League Records, a label that you might not have heard of, but it seems to be gaining some traction, and definitely a label that has my attention. Now, this 5-song EP from With the Punches, I believe they caught my attention with the single Almost Everything. A great track. Actually, it looks like they're a band that was around back in the, you know, several years ago. They had a bit of a fan base, and then they disappeared, and they've come back, but they don't have much of a following on them right now. But this song, Almost Everything, is a great showing from them. The whole EP, though, it does sound rather amateur. It sounds like a pretty new band to me, and I find these songs aren't that strong at all. But if there's one thing to check out, Almost Everything, that's where you're gonna find the best of their sound. I gave the EP a rating of 6.3. And finishing this all off, ELIZA and the Delusionals. Their album Now and Then. This is an Australian band. Their debut album, it looks like. Dreamy 90s pop rock. Think Sixpence None the Richer. Also, I'm getting some pretty big Pale Waves vibes on these songs. A bit more lighthearted than some of Pale Waves' stuff, but definitely within the same realm. And it's some catchy stuff, man. It's easy to enjoy this album. I do find it is a bit lacking, though. They haven't quite managed to really rip into me and get that perfect 4. But you see the 3.5s here, Give You Everything, Nothing Yet, Halloween. Those are the strongest takeaways, and definitely worth a listen. And ultimately a band that I see a lot of promise in. And I'd say we're yet to see the best from ELIZA and the Delusionals. Gave the album a rating of 7.4. Yeah. And that's gonna wrap it up. My casual, pretty much unscripted thoughts on all these albums that, you know, I just had to get off my chest. Hopefully I can do something like this again for a June album roundup. And at the same time, I do want to try and bust out some more in-depth, full album reviews, you know, as things go. Try and stay more on top of the current releases. We'll see what I can do, eh? Until then, thank you for checking this out. Love a thumbs up if you liked what you saw. Hit the subscribe for more alternative content, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm new to doing this kind of format. Love to hear your thoughts on if this works or doesn't work. And let me know if there's any albums that I may have missed. Love to chat. I'll see you next time.